Okay, here we go. Welcome back. Happy New Year. It is actually Little Christmas today. In fact, I'm going to move this camera so you can see my Christmas tree a little more. So, yeah, it's Epiphany, Little Christmas, whatever you call it, if you celebrate it. I actually do celebrate it, even though I'm not Christian or Catholic. I do a little 12 days of Christmas ritual that ends today, but that's another story for another day. So, today I want to talk about the holidays, the accomplishment that I just achieved of having a holiday by myself and loving it after being afraid of being alone on Christmas for my entire life. I actually just did it and it was amazing and fun. And I really want to share my thoughts on it. I've done a really thorough auditing process on this because I want to make sure that I feel prepared for next year. It's not that I necessarily want to make it better, but I do want to make some tweaks to make it a little bit more workable. And like I said, I want to be prepared. I want to make sure that I have what I need mentally, emotionally, physically, all of the things. And I really want to share this because I feel like there are a lot of other people like me who possibly have felt a lot of fear around being alone on the holidays and or who feel a lot of loneliness on the holidays. And I think that the things that I've learned might help them come to a better place with it all, be able to find a way to nourish themselves during this time and to be with themselves because really to me that's the most important thing. So let's talk about my holiday, my solo holiday, my soliday. No? Maybe? Okay. First of all, I'm just going to get into really, really quickly how this evolved in the first place. There's a long, long story behind this that I'm not going to get into, particularly because there are some very personal details. But my father passed away earlier this year, and there have been changes in the family that have resulted in the decision basically to not have a big family holiday at my mom's house like we would normally do. And I was very, very afraid. Like, it's crazy for me to even look back on this and remember that I was terrified of being alone on this Christmas in particular because of my father's loss. And that was the number one thing on my mind all throughout the autumn season was to make sure I wasn't going to be alone on Christmas. My brother very kindly stepped in and invited me to join them. And he even floated the idea of me spending Christmas Eve night at the house to have a sleepover with his kids, which, first of all, I want to acknowledge is just incredibly sweet and kind and generous that they would open their doors to me in that way. And I love them so much for it. My brother and my sister in law, they're so kind and generous. But I also want to say that I'm grateful for a different reason. I'm grateful he brought that up for a different reason, for an unexpected reason. Because if he had not floated that idea, I would never have had the realizations that I had. And to make a long story short, basically, I immediately thought about the occurrences that would be happening on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning in a house with little children, or really any house with a, functioning nuclear family living there. It would be very much about their traditions, what they were doing, particularly for the young kids, as it should be. And I immediately saw myself kind of like over here. And I already know they would have done so much. They would have tried so hard to make me feel like a part of everything that was happening. But there's nothing that anyone can do to really fully bring you into the fold when you are a nuclear family who usually celebrates a holiday alone, right? Like, it's just you have your own stuff that you do, your own traditions, and that's just the way it is. And then when you have really little kids on top of that, they have all kinds of needs and desires that should be met on the holidays. And so I saw myself kind of stepping back during that time and making sure I was being a supportive aunt to them, a helpful sister. And I realized all of that was like, okay, I'm putting myself in a secondary position again. I'm putting myself in the supporting role. I wasn't sure if that was going to work for me. And I absolutely mean no criticism to my brother and his family in any way about that. I'm just saying that it was a very clarifying moment for me. And so I started thinking about what would I like to do if I was alone, if I had to spend the holiday alone, what would I do? And I had all these visions like, well, baking, of course, I haven't baked like a ton of stuff at once in a long time. That would be fun. Maybe it would be fun to put a bunch of blankets on the floor in here right next to the tree and some pillows and just have like a little Christmas nest to lounge in. I imagine doing a puzzle, working on my knitting. I mean, it's not like I don't have stuff to do. And of course, having some Christmas movies on in the background. And all of a sudden, that started appealing to me. And I didn't expect that. And after that, for a couple of weeks after my brother floated that idea, I really came to this realization that that's what I wanted. I wanted to spend Christmas Eve for sure by myself and then arrive at his house the next day, like midday, so that I could have Christmas morning to myself, which is the most particular time of Christmas that I was afraid of being alone on. Like that, every time I envisioned being alone on Christmas, that's what I saw. Myself waking up in this house alone, which I have never done before since I bought this house. I have never, ever woken up alone on Christmas morning by myself, ever. I've always made sure I was at someone else's house or I had a boyfriend that I lived with. So that was like the key moment for me that I was so afraid of. And yet, after I had this talk with my brother, I knew that I needed to experience Christmas morning here alone. And I saw this vision of myself putting cinnamon rolls into the oven and the house filling up with smells of cinnamon and putting on a movie and just sitting here eating a cinnamon roll, enjoying the view and watching a movie. And like, it sounded like heaven to me. And so that is exactly what I did. When Christmas Eve rolled around, I executed all of those plans. And I want to say there were a few challenges for sure. And I think that it's important to talk about those and to prepare for them. So I was having a lot of feelings come up, as you can imagine, a lot of grief, because there is not just the grief of losing my father, but the grief of other things that have happened this year, including the changes within my family. There's so much grief. And I was quite overwhelmed with that. I was overwhelmed with memories because my father was sick last Christmas Eve. The last time he fell ill was Christmas Eve last year. And I have very difficult memories of walking into his room and finding him the way that he was. And so those memories kept coming up for me, and it was very difficult. And I ended up doing two things that I tend to do when I'm struggling. One, I ate a lot. I ate cinnamon rolls. I had to make cinnamon rolls that morning instead of Christmas morning because I messed up the timing of the bread proving, yada, yada. No big thing. And I ate cookies all day. Like I literally decided not to eat actual meals because I couldn't stop eating the sweets that I was making. So emotional overeating, check. And then I also was overdoing. So I kept thinking of more recipes to make. And in my mind at the time, it was like, oh, I'm going to bring these to my brother's house tomorrow. This is perfect. I need a ton of stuff anyways. There's 4 of them. And then by the time I was done cooking, I looked at all of the stuff that I had made and realized 5 people cannot eat this much stuff. I spent all day stressing out and cooking this stuff unnecessarily. And it's going to stress out my sister-in-law potentially to bring all of this food to her house that we can't eat and then to insist that she keeps it because I don't have any place to put it. So I'm going to leave it with her. That's going to be stressful for everybody. And so that is a common thing for me to deal with my feelings by keeping busy, just like adding more stuff to do, especially on the holidays, Christmas time. I am like the person in the kitchen who is cooking and cleaning and like obsessive compulsively doing chores because that's how I've like regulated my nervous system in the past on holidays. So I definitely need to address that. And I also realized that the vulnerability that I have on big days when stuff might come up is that I don't have the same access to my support systems that I would on a normal day. For instance, my workout routines, my routines with my friends, all of these things are usually disrupted by the holidays. Obviously, there are other things that come up. People are busy with their own families, all kinds of stuff. And so I forget that until the day comes. And then I'm like, oh, I can't go on my walk today because blank. Or, oh, I don't have messages from my friends to respond to today because they're on vacation or they're hanging out with their families or whatever. And I do want to say that I have little backups for myself, typically like small things like, oh, I can use my treadmill and do a 15-minute walk. And I also want to note that the friends who really know me are so conscientious and kind that they will check in with me via text. So I know they're there, but it's the routine, like not having the routine there on a day when I'm already fumbling and vulnerable is something that makes me even more vulnerable. So I think what I need to do is come up with a way to create a separate support system for those days, something that doesn't exist in the rest of the year, so that I have something that I can 100% count on to be there for me when it already feels like the floor is a little mushy. So that's something I'm going to work on this year. Things that went right, I mean, mostly everything. Like I said, I struggled during the day quite a lot with all of the feelings that came up, and it did not help that it was a really cloudy, overcast day. So not having the sun, it really got to me after a while. But by the time night fell, I was golden. Christmas Eve night is like my favorite night of the year. I don't know any night that is better, more beautiful, more magical. I loved it so much, and I did everything I said I would do. I came in here, put the blankets down, I got out my puzzle. I did a whole puzzle in one afternoon slash night. It was so fun. I'm definitely going to do that same puzzle on Christmas Eve next year, just as a fun tradition. I watched movies. I continued compulsively cooking. I did stop to have a healthy dinner. I will tell you that. I did a little bit of knitting. I don't even know how to describe how much fun I had. It was so quiet and soft and gentle and beautiful. And I stayed up until 1:30 in the morning because I did not want to go to bed. I never wanted the night to end. It was very difficult to end. And then the next morning, I kind of did the same thing. I just made myself a good breakfast, sat down, and bundled up in my blankets and started watching a movie. I don't actually remember that much about what I did that morning because I just tried to hang out. And I would say the one thing that I'm really proud of is that I stuck to my plans, because my brother sent me a text message with his son in a video saying, "Hi, Auntie, Merry Christmas. I love you. Can't wait to see you." And it just warmed my heart so much. And I was so excited to see him. He's the sweetest kid, and his sister is the sweetest kid. All my nibblings are the best kids in the world. I could not wait to see them. I was so excited. But at the same time, I knew, again, in my mind, it was like, this is not going to be a normal visit. This is a holiday. What do you want? It's like on a normal day, it doesn't matter. But on a holiday, when I've never chosen myself, it suddenly mattered. And I kept getting the feeling that I want to be here alone. And in fact, I actually wouldn't have minded having the whole day to myself. I did want to see the family, like whatever family I could have access to, I wanted to see them. But also, if they had like left town or something, I realized I would have been fine and even kind of loved it to be on my own. So I just want to acknowledge that as well. Okay, so let's talk about the things that I want to continue. So absolutely, like the non-structured playtime, I want to continue. The puzzles, the knitting, the just laying about in a pile of blankets and watching Christmas movies. All of that is going to happen again. Loved it, need more of it. Then I realized that I wanted to add a few more traditions. I realized that I would really enjoy, I think, engaging with with like typical traditions that happen on Christmas Eve. For instance, I want to make myself a stocking. When I was a little girl, my mom made all of us customized stockings with our names on them, and they're just the most beautiful artistic stockings. I love them so much. She did such a good job on them. And I couldn't wait to do that for my own kids someday. When my sister started having kids, she made knitted stockings for them, and they are stunning. Like, oh my God, they are works of art. And again, I remember thinking, God, I cannot wait to do this for my kids. And then I never had kids. And I realized I can make my own stocking. Why can't I have like why can't I still want to make one? Why can't I just make one for myself? I would anyways if I did have kids because I'd want them all to match. So I'd have to remake my own stocking anyway. So why not do it now just for me? And I want to like fill it with really simple gifts like little chocolates and pomegranates, like maybe oranges, something simple and fun and delicious. And I also was thinking about the tradition of offering things to gods and fairies and all of that on special holidays. Like on Imbolc Eve, you leave an oatcake out for the goddess Bridget. And I thought, like, why not do the same thing? Like everybody does it for Santa. You don't have to have kids to do this for Santa. Like I can make something out of it. I don't know that I would do like the traditional cookies and milk. I don't know, but I feel like there's something there that I want to explore and to create some kind of ritual out of it. I want it to be more than just setting it out on the counter. I want it to be like, this is meaningful because. So I need to come up with the story to go with the ritual. But I thought I really want to do that. And then, of course, that made me think of the notes that kids leave for Santa. And then I thought, you know, it would be awesome to write myself a note every year, put it away with the Christmas decorations, and then pull it out again next December and open that on Christmas Eve night. I'm so glad I thought of this now because there's still time to write myself a note so that next Christmas Eve, I will have something to open from me. I will have a note to read from myself. Or maybe I'll read it on Christmas morning. I don't know. Maybe that will be part of the offering ritual. We'll figure it out. And then of course I also kind of want to get myself a special present. I do typically buy myself a few things that I need at the end of the year because sometimes there will be good sales. Like I bought myself this sweater. Like I have some pretty ratty cardigans at this point. I wanted a new one. So I got this when it was on sale. But like I want a special present. Like when I bought myself this engagement ring, what was it, 2 or 3 winter solstices ago? I want to get something special and meaningful like that. Doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, literally, it could be like a really fancy chocolate bar. I want it to be something that is like a little bit luxurious. Like, again, like a box of chocolates or something that indicates just like love and spoiling of myself. And then I want to wrap that and I want to make it real pretty. Like I'm talking Martha Stewart living pretty and put it under the tree on Christmas Eve and open it on Christmas morning. I would love to do that for myself. And I want to add that when I thought of this, I thought of doing all of these things. The one thing that really struck me is how much women, single women, I want to emphasize, and particularly women who don't have children for whatever reason, we are so brainwashed into believing that we are not allowed to participate in cultural holiday traditions until we are married and have kids. We are brainwashed into believing that we are not allowed to exert our own will or have any authority during those periods of time, that we need to allow the women who are married and who are mothers to be in charge of that time. And then we need to make ourselves the secondary characters, the supporting cast. And I've been doing that my whole life. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, I can lay out cookies for Santa. I can make myself a stocking. I can put a present to myself under the tree on Christmas Eve every year. It's such a super simple thing, but it's also kind of revolutionary that we are allowed to participate in all of this stuff if we want to. It's also true that we don't have to participate in any of this at all. I mean, I know a lot of single women who don't have children who don't want to do the holidays, period, who do the holidays because they feel that they have to. And their greatest holiday would be not to acknowledge it at all. Like, forget the trouble of any of this. And I want to acknowledge them as well because that's a completely legitimate option also. But I just really want to hammer it home that if you love the holidays and you are single and don't have kids and maybe you live alone, like there is nothing that we can't do that everybody else does. It is just totally absolute propaganda to suggest that we should have to wait to be able to do any of that, that we can only do that if we have a husband and kids. Like, F that. I'm over it. I can't believe I didn't understand this before. It actually took me spending a Christmas alone to figure this out. And I'm so thankful for that. Now, I also want to add that there are some other things that I would like to kind of add to this time. For one thing, and I know this might sound silly to some people, but my half birthday, meaning the halfway point between my birthdays, is January 2nd. And I don't really like my birthday that much, mostly because it falls 2 days before the loudest, craziest day of the year. Like, it is extremely difficult for me, and I'm not even going to get into it. But my point is, I don't really love celebrating on July 2nd. Of course I will. It's my birthday, so I'll take any excuse I can to celebrate, and that's when people acknowledge it because that's what's on my birth certificate. But the enjoyment that I would like to experience isn't there. And so I've been looking for alternative ways to celebrate my birthday. And one of them happens to be like, what if I made a bigger deal of my half birthday? Not in a public way. It would be just totally me, myself, and I. And I want to keep it simple. So I'm envisioning like a cupcake with a candle in it. And I also want to continue celebrating Epiphany in the way that I do now, but also adding the La Befana gift tradition. If you don't know what that is, on January 5th, the children of Italy leave their shoes and socks out, and the witch La Befana will come and fill them with candy and other small gifts, which is why this day, January 6th, is often called Little Christmas. And then, of course, Epiphany has its own rituals that are associated with the Christian/Catholic Church. I, like I said, have my own little celebration that I do, which I will not get into here for the sake of time, but I want to keep this celebration. And the reason that I'm mentioning all of this is because one of my biggest triggers with winter depression and holiday depression is that there is this extreme emphasis on Christmas Day, and it becomes this huge thing, a huge production, and we go all out for it, and then it's over. December 26th, we wake up and it's like, okay, let's get going. Let's put this stuff away. Even though there's that whole, what is it called? The Twixt week, where, time kind of stands still until New Year's Eve. But then it gets even worse. By January 2nd, we're supposed to get up and like wake up at 4 a.m. and go to the gym and cut out all of the sugar from our diet and be 10 times as productive as we were last year. And it's just so jolting to my system. I find it to be like the fastest way for me to fall into depression is to have this huge thing that I'm looking forward to at the end of the year. And then after that, nothing. We're done. So what I want to do is stretch out the season, but make Christmas smaller. So I want to add things that elongate the season. In other words, my half birthday, Epiphany, or Little Christmas. But I want to keep those things simple, and I want Christmas to be simple so that they're just like little drip releases of holiday cheer until we start coming out of winter. I still haven't figured out how to deal with like the bulk of January and February yet, but I'll get to that. I mean, basically, the point is that I don't really start getting back into the groove until January 7th. Like today is kind of the official end of my holiday season. In my mind, I am keeping this time as like a sacred time until tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll see what happens, but I want to keep things slow and steady and delightful and magical until January 7th. And I really want to emphasize that for a couple of reasons because I believe it's very important for us to push back against grind culture. I believe it's important for us to protect our peace, to protect our mental health, to protect our bodies from these ridiculous ideas of new year, new you. Like, it's okay to take it slowly. We're not done with winter. Like, we're just getting into the depth of it. And the idea that this would be the time that we would push hardest is absolutely insane to me. And then I also want to emphasize it because I feel like it's important to kind of de escalate Christmas a little and to create more practices of joy that are bite sized enough that we can accomplish them without stress. Instead of having this one like all out dopamine feast that costs us so much stress to prepare and then to recover from. Feel like we can do this a little bit slower, more gently, and much more simplistically. All right, so that's my story. I'm so proud of myself. I got to tell you, I could not be prouder. I think I kicked butt this year. I can't believe that just a few weeks ago, I was as terrified of spending Christmas alone as I always have been for my entire adult life. And now I cannot wait to do it again. Now, spending Christmas alone and prioritizing my own needs and traditions is a dream come true. Like it's just incredible to me to see how far I've come this year. So, for all of you out there who struggle with being alone, with being single, with being childless, I hope that this inspired you to try to find ways to live the life that you dreamed for yourself. Like, we don't need to wait to get married and have kids. And oh my God, like to imagine the amount of time that I have wasted doing that. I'm over it. It's time to live. It is time to have fun for me. Thanks for joining me on this holiday audit, my soliday audit. Hmm? Yeah. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I think there's a lot that 2025 has in store for us. A lot of good stuff, believe it or not. All right. Happy New Year. See you next time.